Welcome. I'm Jessica Tietjen, and this is the Evolving to Exceptional podcast, where we talk about reaching peak performance in our workplaces, homes, and communities so that we can live our best life possible, an exceptional life. All right, I want to welcome back our Evolving to Exceptional listeners to this week's episode. This week, we have a fantastic guest who's going to bring us the perspective of talent, of human resources and development from a manufacturing space, from what it's like in that space, which can be different from a lot of the other industries that we work with. And so today, we're going to get into a little bit about development and growth and emotional intelligence and how do you do that in this manufacturing environment and why is that so important? But before we get into that topic, Christina Siewert, I want to give you a chance. You are the HR and talent development director at American Plastics. I want to give you a chance to just maybe tell our listeners a little bit about who you are, why you do what you do, and what it is you're passionate about.
Been in manufacturing probably half of my career. The other half was in services as well as healthcare. But manufacturing in and out over the past, I'm going to age myself 30 years, and mostly in just basic generalist, probably the last 20 years more in employee relations than anything else. And now I'm transitioning to talent development and I'm loving every minute of it.
I love it. And tell me a little bit about what it is you really like about talent development in particular. What is it that lights you up? I share your passion for it, but everybody's kind of reason why is a little bit different.
The reason I enjoy talent development so much more is that it's the fun side of HR, it's the personal side of HR, it's the interactive side of HR. Employees aren't scared by talent development, leadership development folks. When they say HR, that automatically puts fear in the back of their eyes, and then they say, "Oh, she's leader, she's talent development," and they're like, "Oh, okay." Then they can live with that. And then actually some are really excited because it involves employee growth and development. And yeah, I'm really interested in doing more. And how can I go about doing that? People are eager to see you just as much as you're eager to see them. So yeah, that's what I love about it.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. Actually, in my last role, we were never allowed to call it HR. We called it talent management, talent development, which is why I always like fumble over it because HR was like a dirty word in my organization just because of that stigma that kind of comes with it. And talent management and talent development is definitely by far the more fun and the more exciting. So before we got on, we were talking a little bit about some of the challenges in the manufacturing space and within the organization that you're working with now. And my background is in that kind of manufacturing industrial space too. And so I know well a lot of the challenges that you have in terms of delivering that type of training and development to those resources and how you retain them and how you work with them. Can you tell us just a little bit about what some of those challenges have been like and what you've been able to how you've been able to navigate through them?
Yeah, the differences between my current role and my role in the past was I have plants and customers. I refer to employees as my customers countrywide from Arizona to South Carolina. So most things, not all things are remote. Whereas in the past, when I worked in manufacturing, I was typically in the plant 40 hours a week, if not 50 or 60. I could walk out on the floor, get to know my customer individually, personally. Whereas now it's a little bit more of a challenge to get to know people one on one and to build the trust you need to meet goals, to meet individual challenges, to create that relationship that they want to stay for. In healthcare, our goal was to get them at least 30 days because within, I should say 30 to 60 days, because that's when they fell in love with the patient. It wasn't necessarily your individual relationship with each employee, it was their relationship with the customer they served. So it was a little bit different and I really appreciated it. So one of the things that I'd like to bring forward into my job is who's your customer and how do you best serve it? So with it being with people being my customer, my goals remain the same as they did in prior industries, but it's different for the people I serve. They don't deal with individuals unless they're in sales or marketing. They deal with widgets, parts, schematics, forklifts, boxes, whatever it may be. They move things, they process things, and it's not a person. So it's hard to get them to relate to their job unless it's something that they truly enjoy doing. So that's probably my number one challenge as a talent development person.
Yeah, and I don't think that's unique to your space. I think when you have those that are in that service-based, product-based labor, it's different than your office remote worker. They can't work remote if they need to be in the factory, if they need to be working on the floor. And I think one of the struggles then becomes, when do you do training and development? When do you incorporate that, and how do you incorporate that? Both at the beginning when you bring them in, but then also throughout their careers. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about your experience with that, as to how do you train them as they come in? And then how do you do that and make that effective as they're training with you?
Yeah, the healthcare company they worked with previously did an excellent job, and that's, in my opinion, because they had a full, robust leadership team to develop the process. And because I worked in the field as an employee relations specialist, I was granted the great opportunity of rolling it out. So when I was in the process of rolling it out and learning more as I was rolling it out, I was creating those relationships with the leaders that had to deliver to their end users, that being the new employees. And I learned that onboarding orientation just isn't one day. It's usually at least a minimum 30 days, if not 3 months. And quite honestly, most people don't feel comfortable till they've been with a company for a year. So really, your onboarding is a year long. And the one thing that we learned that was more important than anything else was a mentor, or we called them preceptors in healthcare when we were referring to the direct labor entry level positions, mentors for the more degreed, educated positions. And so we made an effort to actually have what we called mentor preceptor training, and we did it every 6 months. And we correlated an employee satisfaction survey with a customer satisfaction survey. And we showed the happier your employees are as they experience work, the happier your customers are. So when you can make that correlation, again, it's easy to sell it. Again, in manufacturing, you do have customers, and you can do customer satisfaction surveys, but again, it's hard to link that. So right now we're in the process of reviewing our onboarding process at a plant that we're doing some leadership team development. And so we're digging deep by doing some basically problem solving, root causing. And that's where you develop your relationships with each other on how well you can communicate your frustrations and your true problems as opposed to the surface. So that's what we're doing right now.
So it's so interesting, because love that you brought up the correlation between customer satisfaction and employee, their level of happiness or their level of engagement. And I've always used Gallup's Q12 questions. And one of their questions is, do you have a best friend at work? And it's the most controversial of questions, but Gallup has kept it for 30 years now, because that question is correlated the most with customer satisfaction. When people have those close relationships, those tight partnerships or relationships in the workplace, then they're more likely, like, they're happier, they're genuinely more connected. And I've even talked with a lot of people about the fact that sometimes they'll stay in even really toxic environments or challenging situations because of the relationships they have, because they like who they work with. And so it's interesting to me, as you think about manufacturing in particular, which is a labor intensive type of work, that those relationships become really key, I think, in terms of retention and development, because that's how it's going to happen, right? It's going to happen
Mhm.
in those interactions, and it's going to happen in those relationships. And so if there's a lot of really good relationships, you can keep people in roles for a long time because they enjoy coming to work and being with the people that they're with, and that gives meaning and purpose, and they feel connected. But if they don't, then it's really complicated. So that relationship building and that team building you were just talking about is really critical and really important. And so tell me, you mentioned a little bit about the surface level challenges versus the root challenges in getting people to talk about or engage at a deeper level. Tell me a little bit more about what some of that development has looked like and what your experience has been with that.
I'm not an expert. I'm currently experiencing a program developed by a colleague. She's actually an HR professional who loves talent development, has done it for the past 30 plus years, is a career coach. And right now we're experiencing developing trust on the team and building trust because right now it's low. I shouldn't say it's low, it's not as high as it could be. She's experienced the higher the trust on the team, the higher performance of the team. And in her experience, she was a part of an automotive company that was a top performer, and they were just a small division within the automotive company. And the CEO came and says, "What are you guys doing?" She's, "We just built trust." And he's like, "Oh, seriously, what are you doing differently?" And it's hard to correlate that trust, the trust scores that you measure on a consistent basis to make sure you're communicating effectively and understanding what the root cause or the true causes of roadblocks, opportunities, bottlenecks, whatever you want to call them, and addressing them rather than letting them lay alongside of the road. And nothing, you can't create or become efficient or even grow from that unless you have that innate ability to have a candid conversation with each other.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've worked with Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions, and he always talks about the pyramid, and at the bottom is trust, and the opposite of trust is a lack of vulnerability. And I think that is usually the root challenge, and especially in a workplace setting and in a team setting, is if the culture or the leader, if there's not a safe environment for people to show up authentically and vulnerably, then it's really hard to build that trust. You stay at the surface until you get into those deeper, more meaningful conversations, or those deeper, more meaningful interactions that deal with, like you talked about, the root issue or the underlying kind of challenge. One of the things we talk about is that, and I talk a lot about the neural networks in our body and our head and our heart and our gut, and that we have these neural networks in the different parts of our body. And our gut brain is really the one that is responsible for our gut intelligence or network, is really responsible for our core sense of safety or our feelings of fear if we have fear. And that's what will prevent us from taking action when we're experiencing a threat of some sort or we're shutting down. And then likewise in our heart space, that's where we have the emotions and the connection to other people, and then what we value and what we find to be important. And so I think what I've discovered or observed, and I'm curious to get your kind of thoughts on, is that when people have developed strategies that involve them shutting down their emotions,
Mhm.
involve them putting them to the side so that they can deal with, so that they can push through, so that they can keep doing what they need to do, then it makes it difficult to connect with other people or to give empathy or receive empathy and compassion when we don't understand, when we're used to not experiencing those emotions.
Yeah, it's interesting. I grew up in an era where you don't show emotions. To show emotion was not necessarily a positive sign of leadership. And it was only within the past, gosh, 14, 15 years have I ever experienced a true senior leader that was vulnerable enough to share his personal emotions. And I don't want to say it shocked me, but it was almost refreshing. It truly was
Mm.
refreshing because and it was, "Okay, maybe I do want to grow to that, and attain to that level because I'm not a robot, and I don't have to shut down my thoughts, feelings, and emotions, even though they might contradict the direction that we're going to." So, yeah, that's something I've had to work on personally. I'm fairly savvy at exterior emotional intelligence. I can estimate, I can articulate. I can understand the emotion somebody else may be expressing without directly expressing it, especially through body language or tone of voice. But the thing that I struggle with is my own internal emotions and how to react to them, especially when they're strong in a professional environment. So a lot of times I'll shut down. I'll shut my emotions down. I won't express my opinion. I'm conflicted. It keeps me from focusing on the work that I need to to accomplish. It keeps me from focusing on that relationship that I have with them. It's very disruptive. And I found through this process, this leadership team process, how to address it. Again, it's something I'm still evolving with. It's something I'm still struggling with, but at least I understand it and I'm reaching out for help from those personal relationships as well as professional relationships to help me correctly, or I shouldn't say correctly, articulate it so that others can relate to it from on an empathetic level when I express my not only my feelings but also my needs. My needs, because if you meet my needs, then whether or not we agree, I can still express how I feel because you understand. I understand you have a need for autonomy. I understand you have a need for integrity, but this is my need, and this is why I feel so strongly about this, and this is why I'm sharing this with you. Is a lot easier to have a conversation around that than it is around your idea makes no sense. You're not being helpful right now. I'm really irritated that you even brought this up. That's not constructive at all. So to just rephrase what you expect or what you want or what you need as opposed to shutting down, because shutting down doesn't help anybody either, because then you're not sharing your thoughts and they're not utilizing your talents to the best of your, not only your ability but their ability. Then you're just a administrative person as opposed to a productive leader.
And it's interesting when we experience emotions and we learn those neural pathways that you're talking about, those patterns are really survival mechanisms for us. They are when you grow up in a home or in a culture or in an environment where expressing emotions is not appropriate, which many of us did in different spaces, right? Many of us experienced that. And we learn to survive those experiences that we need to bottle them. We need to put them away. And here's the interesting thing though is that strategy doesn't work forever. Eventually it comes out, and it comes out, those bottled emotions come out in less healthy ways. They come out in explosions, they come out in burnout, they come out in downs or depression. Like they will make themselves known eventually, and they can even make us sick. They can give us autoimmune conditions or other types of inflammatory conditions and things like that. And pain is another way. It's interesting. I work with a lot of counselors and therapists as well, and we talk about a lot that people will show up with pain in different parts of their body, and it's really just that they've held on to trauma or emotions there. And once they release it, that pain goes away. But you think of it as, oh, I must have done something to my shoulder, or man, my knees really hurt, or whatever. And you don't realize that it's actually your body trying to send you a message, trying to tell you, hey, something's hurting. And so I think what you said is really important about how do we then rewire those, right? Because that's a pattern, and so it's always going to be our default until we change it, until we rewire it. And when we have neural pathways, the longer we have them, the stronger they become. And so our body, our brains are going to want to use them every time over and over. And I'll be the one to go be vulnerable here. I am a emotion bottler for sure. I don't like to feel sad emotions, happy emotions, even angry emotions. I can do those. But when it comes to sad emotions, I'd rather just put those away and put on a smile. And the truth is, though, that makes me sick. That literally makes me get sick. It makes me hurt. It makes me not feel well. And so I've learned that if I can release and face the emotions, if I can express them at the beginning, they actually are less than if you bottle them. They are actually easier to move through, and our interactions get better. Our interactions with other people improve. And it doesn't mean I have to express them at someone, right? It just means that I have to express it. So it might mean I need to go for a walk, or it might mean I need to go do some balanced breathing, or it might mean I just need a really good cry or to scream into a pillow. But you got to do something to acknowledge and allow that emotion to show up. And then it allows you to get to okay, now what do I truly feel about it? Once I allow myself to feel that sadness, now what do I truly feel? What's underneath that? And I always talk about how a lot of people don't necessarily know how to listen to the messages of their heart, the emotional messages. So sometimes we like get a sensation, but we don't realize it's actually a message. We don't realize it's a communication. Our heads are really loud, right? They talk to us all day long. They give us a running commentary on everything we see and interact with, right? But our hearts don't have that language. And so our hearts will tend to show up in other ways, in sensations, in smells, in colors, in visuals, in pain, or you may actually feel your heart skip a beat, or you may feel flutters, or you may start to develop a heart condition. Broken heart syndrome is a documented condition now because of that. And so part of helping people to understand their emotions is actually helping people to understand how to listen, how to listen to those messages and make space and time for those messages.
Yeah, I agree with that. I And that's something I struggle with because I've bottled my emotions so much in the past, is I don't know how to identify that. And I don't know how to identify when I'm feeling an extreme emotion. Anger, sadness are probably the two. I know embarrassment. I know my face gets red. I know I get hot. When I'm angry, though, I'll go from 0 to 60, especially if I've bottled it up over time. I should say that I hate that about myself. I don't really care for that habit. So if I could somehow develop a different pathway to deal with that anger, that root cause, why I'm going to that extreme, especially through identifying it and how I'm feeling in the moment, as opposed to just going there. That's my biggest challenge at the moment, is dealing with that anger. Sadness, I've been able to deal with this. We're really good about giving us each other a break, especially when there's a death or a serious illness in a family. In the past, I've always walked it out, listened to sad music until after that walk, I feel a lot better. You don't allow that yourself professionally. And I wouldn't know how to incorporate it into the workplace, but boy, what a wellness plan if you put it in your benefits package. Don't know what that looks like, other than I know there's employer resources networks out there that involve coaching and counseling. But that right there is not necessarily a talent development branch, but it could and should be, as part of, especially when it comes to leadership development.
And it's interesting, I coach and work with a lot of different leaders to unlock some of these patterns or to rewire them. And what I think is interesting is that sometimes we think it's gonna be harder than it really is, and that's part of the resistance. We think we're gonna have to deal with some trauma or some really deep-rooted issue. And while there likely is a trauma and a deep-rooted issue in there, because we've all had them, when it comes to the workplace and those interactions, we can change those patterns without necessarily having to retell or dredge up a trauma or an experience. What we have to do is get more used to that listening piece, get more used to, especially for our heart and our gut intelligences, how do we quiet our mind and sense into what is our heart truly telling us? What does it truly feel? What does it truly value? What does it truly connect with? And then allowing those messages, whether a lot of times, so if there is language, it's heart based language, like I feel heartbreak or I feel my heart hurts, or there's some type of kind of language in there. It might be a song, it might be music, it might be a, like I said, a visual, it might be sensation. And when we notice them, then bringing that inquiry to it, bringing that inquiry to, you use the example of that embarrassment. Okay, why is this embarrassment coming? Why do I truly feel embarrassed? And then what comes from that and connecting to that. And one of the other things with this is that a lot of times when we're feeling a lot of emotions, we're not in a regulated state. We're not our nervous system is in a fight or flight state rather than a balanced state. And in order to really hear the intelligent messages from our hearts, our guts, and our brains, we really have to be in a coherent state. And so when I coach people, we will actually We'll go through the challenge. They may get upset or they may experience, we'll flush out that communication, but then we go into a coherent state with some balanced breathing to regulate the nervous system so that they can really get that inner wisdom. What is it really that your heart needs? What is really going on here? So you can reconnect it into, here's what I need to do, or here's my next step. And sometimes I think people think it's harder than it is, and it's actually just we're not trained to do it. It's actually just not part of our typical learning, typical training. And I went all the way through law school. So I was in school for 8 years, college, grad school, law school. I never learned any of that, right? I learned thrive and survive, right? Just push and keep going as hard as you can and you'll succeed. And so I think there's a lot of training and development kind of in this space. And this is one of the things I think, and you and I talked about this before, the importance of thinking about training and development as something that's integrated into our daily lives of, hey, why did this emotion come up, or how are we solving this problem, or and using daily life activities to continue to evolve and grow versus always looking at it as, I'm going to do training to learn, and then I'm coming back to do work, and them being like two separate things when really they're very intertwined, especially when it comes to human growth and development.
Yeah, I think I shared with you earlier that my goal, at least my recently discovered goal, is to help every employee reach their potential. With that understanding, potential is like you said, you can't separate it when you walk out to the door and you go to work, or when you walk back into your house and you show up for your family. It's we're all human, unless you're on the computer all day and you deal with robots or robot language. You're dealing with human beings, and we pretty well operate the same. And so you need to use the same habits that you would use at home with your family as you would at work, understanding there's a separation between work and family, but at the same time, for communication purposes, for trust building purposes, you have to, like you said, develop those habits. And historically, we don't teach that in secondary education or even graduate school. I don't there's right now there's a lot more leadership development programs in secondary education and graduate education than there were 30 years ago when I went to school. And I wish I'd had it then, but obviously I'm learning more now and I'm enjoying every second of it. And I'm eager to share, and I'm passionate about these young leaders. They're so talented, especially with technology, but they have no clue how to interact because they're so focused on technology. So finding that balance will be really key to growing your younger population in addition to your older population. So yeah, this is a lot of fun.
And it's interesting you bring that up because I think when it comes to leadership development, one of the things I personally think is a little bit of a mistake mo- to continue doing this moving forward, not necessarily that it was historically, but is that we prioritize or select only a subset of the population for this type of development, for this emotional awareness training or self awareness or expectation setting or giving effective feedback, all those kind of foundational people and performance trainings when really every human being needs it. And every
Mhm,
human being is doing those things, whether it's in the workplace or at home every single day. And when it comes to a lot of these things, I've got 3 kids, I've got an 8-year-old and twin 5-year-old girls. I use this all the time, every
mhm,
day. And actually, kids are great because they haven't been programmed yet. So
mhm,
their hearts, their gut brains will just communicate, and they'll communicate so clearly, like what is going on or what they're experiencing. And so you get like really clear examples when a kid is in a fight, shutdown because they're afraid, when their fear is triggered by something. You can see it, right? You can see it so clearly. Either they're frozen or they're fighting, right? They're fighting back.
mhm,
No, I'm running away. I'm fighting back. Like it's so obvious. But then we don't necessarily recognize that same thing
mhm,
happens when that leader gets super pissed off because they're afraid that they're going to be seen as not smart enough or that they failed or screwed something up. And so their reaction is to say names or to run off or to whatever. And it's a similar reaction, but we don't see it as clearly, but it's happening every day. And it's having a huge impact on people's performance and effectiveness because just simply because we haven't done a good job of doing this type of development. We do a
Mhm.
good job of how to set up processes or how to use a tool or how to communicate. We don't do a good job of how to communicate using all of our intelligence, how to communicate in a conscious way.
Correct. Yeah, no, I agree. And you're right. It does start from what, birth, 0 to where you're at now. And the thing I think I learned that was the most growth expanding for me was, again, I'll refer back to my experience in healthcare when we talked about leading, and we trained leaders from C-suite executive, managers, directors, but we also trained those mentors and preceptors that were on the ground floor. And the biggest misconception is that if they went back to the campus and they said, okay, I'm a preceptor now, I'm in charge, and you're going to do what I tell you to do. So the one thing we had to get across from them so they had a successful process of integrating them and their talents into their teams was that the best way, the biggest way you can impact your campus, your residents, your coworkers is to lead by example.
Mm,
So therefore, figure out in your head what talent do you bring and how can you show, not tell, show others that this behavior is what is reasonable, acceptable, helps a patient feel more comfortable in a situation that no one wants to go into because they're not in a situation they could be at home with their loved ones. That's probably the biggest thing that I like to share with people that aren't necessarily in a quote unquote official leadership capacity. You're still a leader. You can still be a leader on the shop floor, the manufacturing site floor, or the in the distribution center, where whatever type of manufacturing environment you're working, you can still be a leader by leading by example, doing the thing that is best expected of that position. And that includes communication, sharing emotion, sharing needs, building trust. So yes, it needs to be done from the top down. It needs to start at the top, unfortunately, and then go trickle down. And it doesn't always start that way. But the interesting thing that I learned as a part of this process is we don't necessarily have C-suite participation or embracing the process. Not that they're not aware of it, not that they don't agree with it. They just don't consciously communicate it on a consistent basis. But if we want our site, our location, our manufacturing facility to result in this type of culture where you feel warm, welcome, and comfortable, confident, competent, that we have to show it. Again, we're discovering that and building that trust so that we can trickle down to those that we serve.
yeah, and I think you're absolutely right, and I'm a proponent of everyone needs that basic leadership training, and that given the way the world is going, there's gonna be so much more need for more people to be empowered to make those decisions in different roles, and there's not gonna be the same type of oversight, ability moving at the pace that we're expected to move at in this world. And so I'm a believer in the more that organizations can equip their people with the skills that they need to be successful, then the more likely, yeah, of course, the people are going to be engaged. They're going to be more likely to stay, all the metrics you want to achieve. But even more than that, they're actually going to make your business more effective. They're going to make you more successful because you've equipped them with what they need to help you make that business successful. So instead of having to oversee everything and question whether people are working and doubt if they're meeting the right goals or if they're achieving what you need them to achieve. Instead, you're going to have trust because how you've equipped them and what they're delivering. And it's a totally different feel and a totally different outcome when organizations accomplish that.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And that's not something typical of manufacturing or distribution. So, yeah, I learned a lot, and I learned a lot of empathetic behaviors based on the healthcare industry. Don't get me wrong, there's healthcare has its opportunities, but they deal with the human space as opposed to the part widget space. And it's easier to understand in that space. So that's something that as leaders in manufacturing distribution, we have to make sure that, hey, the end result may not You may not have a direct result or impact to the customer you serve, but you do with the people that you create that service or product for.
Yeah, and to your point, if you could be a manufacturing company that was different, that really did equip people in that way, how attractive would that be to the
Hmm.
population that
Yeah.
fills those roles? And honestly, I'm married to an engineer. I've got kind of that background in my space, and they're human beings too. And they may not be
Hmm.
interacting with humans every day in the workplace with customers, but they are with each other. They are at home. They do have children or families or relationships. They are community leaders or community members. And so, as human beings, we're actually wired to be in community and relationship with one another. It's essential, really, to our survival as a species. It's important to us and how we create those neural pathways and how we grow. And so thinking about it from that perspective, it almost doesn't matter what industry you're in, the impact could be so significant if organizations were willing to make that investment and really give people the time and the support to develop in those ways.
Yeah, I got a little bit in my last position. I got a little bit of exposure again to an employee resource network that we had a social worker that came in a couple hours a week. And that was, again, it was a manufacturing environment. And I was so astounded at everything that we could address for the individual because there's some things you want to keep separate from business personal. And this person could address those personal issues that impacted the workplace without us having to get involved, but we could be supportive because we provided that service to them, which if you can get involved in employee resource network or again develop a program where like you said, Jessica, where you can engage each employee with that type of behavior, how powerful would that be, especially when it yeah, you increase your efficiencies, effectiveness, reduce your turnover, increase your employee satisfaction, increase your employee engagement. Your numbers would increase, at least your positive numbers would increase significantly over time with that. Just the fact you have a conversation around it is impactful in a
It's
manufacturing environment.
It's funny because, so being in my past world, we implemented a lot of these strategies and we got to achieve those metrics and those results and see how much retention can increase and profitability and productivity and all of those things. And it's one of the reasons in my organization now why it's so easy for me to offer 100% satisfaction guarantee, because I know that when people complete this, when they do these steps, when they integrate some of these practices, it's so transformative that it's impossible not to get the results. And so it's
Mhm.
not like I take a training where you don't get results from it because people don't retain it, but where you really embed certain learning and development practices, you see just huge transformation and it can make such a huge impact.
Yeah.
So as I want to bring this together here at the close. I think you and I could probably talk all day on this topic. It's
Mhm.
such a passion of mine and yours, I know. But I'm curious, just to wrap this around, what are your final thoughts or any insights you have for our listeners on this topic and on what maybe you might take out of or move forward from this conversation with for yourself and your organization?
Yeah, I'm really excited about because again, I never knew how to identify those feelings when I'm having those conversations. And even when it's a casual conversation, I never identified those things, especially in the workplace, because I was conditioned to push it down. So my biggest opportunity is identifying, and it's interesting that you expressed the heart and the brain and the gut. Just to expand on that knowledge itself is encouraging. And like you said, if you could bring that to all employees, not just those in a leadership position, um, but the challenge is to incorporate it into each culture. Again, the conversations need to be had in the workplace, need to be introduced in the workplace, need to be discovered in the workplace. And until you start that, until you initiate that, then you're just another manufacturing distribution center, and people don't necessarily see you as a unique growth opportunity. And and again, if my mission is to help every employee reach their potential, that involves growth. And so we have to examine all aspects of human growth, not just, like you said, the processes, the policies, the procedures, the blueprints, whatever that may be. But again, to keep having those conversations, because it won't be received initially, but eventually over time, if you show success, if you can demonstrate competence, then the results will be apparent.
I love it. I think that's such great wisdom. And I think this has been a great conversation. And I think what I would leave our listeners with today is just the powerful impact that we can have in our organizations and in our workplaces and in our own lives when we really discover and intentionally connect with our full intelligence, that and especially that emotional intelligence, and we really understand what that wisdom is and apply it in our lives, that we can make changes to our experiences and our relationships and our connections that we might never have really believed possible before. And so I want to remind all our listeners to just always keep evolving, keep growing, keep learning, keep looking for those opportunities so that you can live your most exceptional life, a life that you can look back on and feel like was truly an exceptional life. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll be back again next week with another episode.